Hey there. So today I'm going to answer the question, do I need a headphone amp or DAC for this new pair of headphones I have? I feel like I get this question constantly. I've asked myself this question a bunch of times, and usually, at least in my case, it comes down to I have this like expensive-ish pair of headphones, and I think, oh, well, if I don't have a DAC and amp for them, like I'm not getting the full benefit of the headphones, right? And so you think if I paid X amount of dollars for these headphones, then certainly it can't hurt me to pay a little bit more to get a better experience. So I've made a flow chart to answer the question, should I get a DAC or an amp? And here's that flow chart. Okay. So what we have here is, do I need to buy a headphone amp or DAC? The first thing you should ask yourself, and by the way, this is the very logical way to go about this. We'll talk about the reality of the situation afterwards. Am I getting any buzz or distortion in my headphones? So if the answer is yes, then you might have an issue where you actually do need to think about some other way, right, other than just plugging into your sound card. So you can change where you plugged it in. You know, if you plugged it in versus the front port versus the rear port, perhaps there's interference that you got rid of. Did you try that? If you tried that and it fixed it, then great, you're done, right? From that perspective, there's no buzz, you're good to go. If no, then yeah, you probably need something, right? You could 100% try the Apple dongle. It's cheap. It does everything you needed to do for a DAC and an amp, but it doesn't feel very fun, right? To think I can spend just such a tiny bit of money. There's sort of that mentality, right? Where it's like, it can't be that good if it's that inexpensive. But the reality is, if you plug this in, like USB-C to a headphone output, you will probably be 100% fine, right? If you have a ton of stuff going on as far as like Bluetooth cables, unshielded cables, whatever, yeah, you still may get interference here, and you may want to run something further away from your computer, and a headphone amp / DAC could do that, right? And it would be easy. You wouldn't have to try things. You wouldn't have to try to ground things, and it would probably work. So that's the end of this particular thread. Now, if we look down and you're not getting any headphones, not getting any buzz or distortion in your headphones, the next option would be to think about, are my headphones loud enough, and do I have a bit of headroom? Meaning, if I have everything maxed out, are they plenty loud? And like, if I have Windows maxed out, can I turn Spotify down to like 80% and I'm still getting good volume? If the answer is yes, then you don't need anything, right? Let's just be realistic here. It is not going to provide you a better experience. You can, and I've done this, right? You can placebo yourself into buying it and thinking that it's providing like better sound quality or more soundstage or more nuance or a warmer sound. You're not getting that from a headphone amp, right? Unless the current way you're powering your headphones is just not enough to power them, right? You would need a deficiency to make up for, but you're not going to get just better sound from a headphone amp. I mean, I realize this might be hotly contested, especially when people spend thousands upon thousands of dollars sometimes and claim they can hear all kinds of things. I can't hear it. Maybe your physiology is different than mine, or maybe it's snake oil. I'll let you be the judge. If your headphones are not loud enough, though, and this does happen, right? I've had this legitimately happen with a pair of ZMF headphones that were they seem to be super power hungry. Even though my sound card is rated to support them, I wasn't getting the volume until I added a headphone amp. And maybe that's on me, I don't know, but like, yes. So I actually needed a headphone amp. I didn't try the Apple dongle in this situation, but the Apple dongle might have resolved it as well. So, I mean, like, if your goal is just to solve the issue, get an Apple dongle, plug it into USB-C, plug it into your iPad, and you should be good to go, honestly, right? You can also just plug in your computer. And that's sort of like the simple logical version. But regardless, right, of like whatever has happened here, and if you've come out out of this little questioning for yourself and saying, oh, you know what? I don't need an amp, or I don't need an amp. Realistically, you're probably still going to buy an amp, right? Like if you're asking this question, you probably don't care as much about the logical side and you care more about some other things. So let's talk about some of those other things. So, one thing that's super valid is you may want a preamp. You may want one device where you can plug in headphones and a speaker at a minimum, right? So if that's the case, then it makes a lot of sense to buy something external. The JDS Labs Atom, either the Stack or the Element, I think are fantastic for the price. They give you a preamp. Honestly, like the Atom Plus, I think it is, not the Atom 2. That DAC and amp combo still, I think, are fantastic. You don't even need to go, like, there's really no reason for the extra power in the Atom 2, but it's a nicer enclosure. And the Element, I would say get that if you're looking for aesthetics, right? Like if you want a big knob that feels really good. And I'm not being facetious here, right? Like aesthetics are important, and if you want a big knob that feels really good, go for that. Feature-wise, right? There's some potential rationale, like onboard EQ. I found to be good and interesting. I don't really want Windows handling my EQ just because it seems like a faff and it seems annoying. But hardware EQ on a DAC has been good for me in certain circumstances. Generally, I don't EQ headphones, but sometimes I do. And yeah, so that could be helpful. That could be like a feature reason why you want to do it. The other reason is, and this is sort of like if you're thinking about sound and how something sounds, right? Like the headphones that you buy are going to be like the most important thing in the chain, right? Like the change in headphones is the biggest change you can make to sound. Everything else is so negligible in my mind. Like a DAC and amp combo are only going to help, right, if you cannot power them effectively. And for most people, I just don't think you're going to notice a difference, especially if you like ABX it, right? Like if you really gain match and plug something else in, I've 100% thought to myself, this sounds so much better with whatever thing it is I've owned, right? And then I plug it in just straight into my computer and I'm like, oh my God, this sounds exactly the same. That's happened to me, and it's depressing, right? So you have to sort of put that aside and realize you're probably buying it for fun. You like to research stuff. You want more gear. You want something fun for your desk. Those are valid reasons. The other time, though, is if you wanna mess around with tubes. So I've got this TA26S. This thing is built like a tank, and it weighs I don't know how many pounds this is, like 6 pounds. And so I think this is actually pretty ugly, honestly, if I'm being straight up honest, right? But at the same time, this thing is pretty amazing. It's fairly inexpensive. I think sub $500. I've had to swap out the tubes, right? So I did a lot of quote unquote tube rolling, and I don't know much about tubes. So I followed guides online of people who have the same unit. And I was running ZMFs through here, ZMF Aeoluses. And so I will say that this was the only device, and I have a previous video I'll link where I talk about some of the audio equipment I've owned, and I've owned a ton that just cost everything from $30 to $1,300 to $2,000. And as far as like equipment that wasn't headphones, this is the only piece of equipment that has like changed the sound in a way that I could notice. That being said, not always positive, but definitely changed it, right? And so I finally come up with a sort of pairing that I like of tubes. Now I did go through a ton of tube pairings, and it's like a lot of kind of work, to be honest, right? You have to let the tubes heat up. You have to let them, honestly get some hours in. Like it's a lot of stuff. And then if it doesn't sound good or right, you do it again and you wait and then you cool stuff down. So it does take some work, but I sort of found these, and what I experienced is, without using flowery audiophile language, there's like a distortion, I think is the best way to put it. It's a pleasant distortion that makes certain types of music just sound better, to me anyway, right? And I think it's probably very dependent also on the headphone you're using. The tubes that came with this I hated. They just sounded muddy and veiled. But after like swapping the tubes and going through some recommendations people had online, I ended up with the ones in here, and I'm quite happy with this, right? This is a solid headphone. There's no DAC in here, so you have to get another DAC source into it. But other than that, I love this, and I can also use it to go out to my speakers. And I don't know, I wouldn't say there's like much of a difference with the speakers, but it's not bad, certainly. But other than this, other than like aesthetics, I really don't think like a power amp that's just giving you clean power is going to get you anything other than clean power. If you want to be on like 20% because that's, you know, it's good, go for it, right? Like, but it's not gonna bring you quality. And so, yeah, I assume there's going to be some rabid, mad audiophiles, but, you know, I think that for most people, the Apple dongle or plugging in directly to your computer is going to be the way to go, honestly. But then again, if you're watching this video, I'd say there's probably like a 0.02% chance you're going to actually go that route. So